Hey folks, I hope that you guys are doing pretty well. So today is Thursday, the 17th of February 2026, and in today's video I'm going to decipher for you Psalm 124, okay? Now Psalm 124 is for the second half of the tribulation period, okay? Now it's only 8 verses, so let's get straight into it. Now verse 1, it reads, "If it had not been for the Lord who was on our side, now my Israel say," okay, and then it follows on to verse 2, but it kind of like stops there on verse 1. So basically stops here on verse 1 because prophecy is being activated, okay? So commentary, this prophecy is for the second half of the tribulation period when the abomination of desolation happens, okay, as you shall see very shortly, according to Daniel 9:27 and Luke 21:20, okay? And the Jewish people are forced to flee into the Judean mountains, okay, like it says in Luke chapter 21, especially if you read verses 20 to 24. Okay, now the prophecy reads, "If it had not been the Lord who was on our side," then this activates Revelation 12:14, okay? "And to the woman, which is Israel, was given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she might fly into the wilderness, into her place." Okay, so it links back to Luke chapter 21, you know, the Jewish people fleeing into the Judean desert, if you like, you know. So this prophecy also activates Isaiah 28:18, "And your agreement with hell shall not stand when the overflowing scourge shall pass through." Now this overflowing scourge is pretty much the flood, the word that's coming out of the dragon's mouth, okay? It also begins to activate the prophecies in Jeremiah chapter 30 verses 11 to 15 and Zechariah 13:8-9, in that only a third will come through, okay? Those that are living in the land will make it into the millennial kingdom, as well as Daniel 12:1. Now verse 2, it reads, "If it had not been the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us," okay? So now we kind of know why this psalm is actually for the second half of the tribulation period. Now if you think about it, if it had not been the Lord who was on our side when men rose up against us, and it ends there because it then follows on to verse 3, "Who are these men that rose against Israel?" Well, Israel is going to be, you know, let's just say that they're going to be okay, I guess, in the first half of the tribulation period, even though it's Jacob's trouble in comparison to the second half, because, you know, 3 kings will be, of course, Israel, America, and Great Britain. And so Israel will have their interests well represented in the first half of the tribulation period because they are valid that already signed the covenant of peace already with the Antichrist, okay? And so they're gonna be okay, shall we say, even though it's a tribulation period. So who are these men that will rise up against Israel in the second half of the tribulation period? Okay, now commentary. When men rose up against us, okay, and here we begin to read and realize that the men against Israel are, you know, of course, the Antichrist, which in the second half of the tribulation period will be known as the son of perdition because Satan is going to possess him, okay, after he dies of that deadly wound, according to 2 Thessalonians chapter 2 verse 3, or even Leviathan, you know, if you read Psalm 104 verse 26 and Isaiah chapter 27 verse 1, okay. Now in Revelation 13:1 we read how the Antichrist arises, okay. And also, it's not just the Antichrist that's going to be against Israel, but also the false prophet, you know. You know, Revelation 13 verses 11 and 12, you know, that's why you got the false prophet and Satan when, you know, he possesses the Antichrist, as per Revelation 13:4, okay. Now, on top of this, you're going to have the 10 kings of Daniel 7:24, that together with the Antichrist, they're going to be ruling the world together, with the Antichrist. So 3 kings will be subdued, okay, from their roots, okay, and that will be Israel, America, and Great Britain, because the Antichrist no longer wants to represent the interest of Israel, but in fact, he's coming after the Jewish people. He wants to pretty much annihilate them. That's why we're going to have to flee to the wilderness, and there's going to be a lot of bloodshed, in Jerusalem, when the armies compass Jerusalem. And there are prophecies in the Psalms regarding this as well, which I will tell you in a moment very soon. So Israel, America, and Great Britain equals the interest of Israel, if you like. That's why they're going to be subdued, okay? Other men that will come against Israel, aside from all these main leaders, if you like, the 10 kings and so on, will be armies that will be used to compass Jerusalem, or they will be under the guidance of the leadership, rather, of the Antichrist, okay, as per Luke 21:20. And others to exercise control, in other words, all workers of iniquity and those that do evil, according to all the prophecies in Psalm 14 and 53, for example. Now, Psalm 14 and 53, they mirror each other. They're pretty much exactly the same. Similar to suffering on Psalm 2, verses 2 and 3, which, all those people, the Antichrist and so on, and the 10 kings will be coming against Israel, okay? So you can also link it to that as well. Verse 3, then they had swallowed us up quick when the wrath was kindled against us. So basically, it's swallowing up is, the dragon that's going to cause that flood. But, God is going to prepare a price for the Jewish people, okay? So commentary, that has swallowed us up quick is actually avoided thanks in part to number 1, Revelation 12:6, and also Revelation 12:14, meaning that according to Revelation 12:6, the woman, meaning Israel, fled into the wilderness where she had a place prepared of God, okay? So the flood is not going to have an effect on the Jewish people. Now, some, of course, will perish because 1/3 will make it through in the land, and when Jerusalem is compassed by armies, people will perish, but not everyone is going to perish. Those that get to the hiding spot, prepared by God, they will be saved, if you like, from the serpent's flood, okay? Now, this is also linked to Daniel 12:1, and it reads, and at that time shall Michael stand up, the great prince which standeth for the children of thy people, meaning Israel. And this prophecy is working alongside Revelation 12, verses 7 and 9. And verse 7, it reads, there was war in heaven. And on verse 9, it reads, and the great dragon was cast out, and Israel is protected supernaturally by God, then according to all the prophecies in Psalm 91. So basically, we have two main issues here, in that, yes, the serpent is gonna cause a flood, but there will be a remnant that will flee, and the God is going to protect them supernaturally, a place prepared by God, okay? But nonetheless, Daniel 12:1 tells us that, Michael, the archangel that protects Israel, is gonna stand up, and there's gonna be war, in heaven and so on. And but God is going to protect them supernaturally, that remnant that makes it through into that hidden place, according to the prophecies in Psalm 91. So we got two issues here. We got issue number 1 here and issue number 2 here. So it's going to be problematic, it's going to be, quite scary, for the Jewish people when the abomination of desolation happens, so all these things will be happening, all these prophecies plus more will be triggered. So it's gonna be quite something. But anyway, just getting back here to verse 4. Then the waters had overwhelmed us. The stream had gone over our souls. So basically, from a commentary I put in, we get to ask a question: whose waters are they from? These waters are from the serpent, if you like. Verse 4, or Satan, according to Revelation 12:15, which reads, "And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman," meaning Israel, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. So basically, yes, this prophecy here on verse 4, the word is actually referring to the floods, that the devil or the serpent is actually going to cause, and that the Jewish people will have to flee. So now on verse 5, then the prayer waters had gone over our soul. So basically, if the serpent would have succeeded, the prayer waters, meaning that the devil would have been proud that he was able to flood the children of Israel, the Jewish people, and that he would have gotten away with it. But that's not going to be the case with a remnant. Commentary had the earth not open up to take in the waters of the flood. That was a supernatural act by God. Satan would have been proud, proud of the waters, proud of what he did of himself in trying to destroy the Jewish people, but God acted supernaturally, because it's already a prophecy that will come to pass. You could probably say, well, God will act supernaturally, but it's kind of like on the past tense here, if you know what I mean. So yeah, God acted supernaturally, if you like, by protecting Israel in Revelation 12:16, and the earth helped the woman, in other words Israel, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood which the dragon cast out of his mouth. Okay, so basically the prayer waters are meaning that if the devil has gotten away with it, but not so, because according to Revelation 12:16, God is going to do a supernatural act in which the earth is going to swallow up the waters. So God will make an opening, if you like, to get rid of that flood, because there will be a hidden spot that Israel will hide, where God is going to protect that remnant that will escape, and God is going to protect them supernaturally. And so you need to take into account the prophecies in Psalm 91. Okay, now verse 6, "Blessed be the Lord who has not given us a sprite to the teeth." So basically, the serpent's flood, but basically pride to the teeth, plural, meaning that of course the Antichrist together with the 10 kings and all the workers of iniquity, and so the Jewish people, that remnant that gets saved in that supernatural place, if you like, in which God is going to protect the Jewish people. They're going to be blessing God, for doing that, for allow them to survive that. So commentary, so the Jewish people will be blessing God for protecting them, because also, and key, if you like, they will know by this time in the second half of the tribulation period that Jesus was and is to come as the Messiah, according to Revelation 12:17. So they're going to be saying, "Blessing is the Lord," because not only the Jewish people will know that God is going to protect them supernaturally, but they will know by that time, by the beginnings of the second half of the tribulation period, that Jesus is the Messiah, because Revelation 12:17 says, "And have," in other words, the Jewish people, "the testimony of Jesus Christ," meaning that they're gonna believe in Jesus. Plus Israel will rise up a prophet at the beginning of the second half of the tribulation period, as soon as Moses and Elijah leave. Now, during the time, the elders of Israel will know their prophecies, because they're gonna get the Bibles out, if you like, and they already have the testimony of Jesus, okay, of Jesus Christ. And so the others of Israel will know the prophecies, and they will remember, especially Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, but he, Israel, shall be saved out of it. But most of all, the elders of Israel will remember the prophecy in Isaiah 28:18, which reads, and your covenant with death shall be disannulled, okay, and your agreement with hell shall not stand when the overflowing scourge shall pass through. Now this overflowing scourge shall pass through is meaning and linked to the flooding waters cast out by the serpent as per Revelation 12:15, okay, because this overflowing scourge, if you like, is like the flood, it's overflowing. Where overflows a flood, okay. Now, and there will be a remnant that will be saved. Now, Israel will rise up their own prophet at the beginning of the second half of the tribulation period to unite the Jewish people unto Jesus Christ, the Messiah. Now, this prophet will give Israel a sense of direction, just like I'm doing here in the last days of the church age as a prophet, okay. Now, verse 7. A soul is escaped as a bird out of the snare of the fowlers. The snare is broken and we are escaped. Okay, now the snare, of course, is the abomination of desolation, the rising up of the 10 kings, and especially Jerusalem being compassed with armies. That's a snare. And also the flood, that's also a snare that the Antichrist is going to cause. But if you want to read more regarding the snare, then read Psalm 74 verse 8. Now, commentary: the Antichrist is going to set up a trap, if you like, or a snare for Israel at the beginning of the second half of the tribulation period, when he causes the abomination of desolation, okay, as per Daniel 9:27, and compasses Jerusalem as per Psalm 79 verse 3. Now, when you read Psalm 74 verse 8 and Psalm 79 verse 3, it's actually quite horrific, because a lot of Jewish people will die in Jerusalem as a result of this compassing, if you like. And it also links to Luke 21:20 as well. Now, as well as this, he would choose his 10 kings, like I said earlier, as per Daniel 7:24, and subdue 3 kings, meaning Israel, America, and Great Britain, to rid himself, if you like, of the interest of the Jewish people. But God will save a remnant, as he has promised this in Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 7, okay, but he shall be saved out of it, and the Jewish people will escape. God himself will control this. So who survives, this Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 7, and Daniel chapter 12, okay. Let me just get onto here, show you Daniel chapter 12 on the Bible, because this is actually important. So let me just flip to the pages to Daniel 12. So who survives this remnant, and many of them that sleep in the dust of the earth shall arise, some to everlasting life, and some to shame and everlasting contempt. Okay, and at that time thy people shall be delivered, everyone that shall be found written in the book. So God has a remnant that will be written in the book. Many will, many will die during the second half of the tribulation period, when the abomination of desolation happens. But God knows who will make it into heaven, okay? And some will, some won't, sadly. But if you read Zechariah 13:8, then God is actually in control. The Jewish people will escape. A remnant will make it, according to Jeremiah chapter 30 verse 7, and he shall be saved out of it. So God himself will control these numbers. I just show you the prophecies in Daniel 12 verses 1 and 2. So God is sovereign, and According to Zechariah 13:8 and 9, on verse 9 it reads, and I will bring the third part, see, through the fire, and I will refine them as silver is refined. So God is the one who is in charge of who makes it into the millennial kingdom. God is in charge of which remnant of that third will make it into the millennial kingdom, not only according to Zechariah 13:8 and 9, but also according to Daniel chapter 12, verses 1 and 2, out of this that will be saved, out of the remnant of those church people that will make it into the millennial kingdom, verse 8, it reads, a help is in the name of the Lord who made heaven and earth. Of course, going to here, the church people will put the 5 on Jesus to save them. That will carry the testimony of Jesus Christ according to Revelation 12:17, like I said earlier. But also the prophet of Israel will also help with this cause by encouraging the people, by prophesying and leading the Jewish people unto Jesus Christ, which this is the mission of Israel's prophet, So yeah, it's quite a kind of like a harrowing psalm, this one, this Psalm 124, and it's just all for the second half of the tribulation period. And verse 1, it begins to activate all these prophecies, how Jerusalem is going to be, just to recap here, how it's going to be compassed, with armies, the rise of the Antichrist as the son of perdition, or Leviathan. Satan is going to possess him, it's going to be a remnant according to that will make it through, to the millennial kingdom, but there will be unto the sovereignty of God, according to Daniel 12:1 and also Daniel 12:2, if you like. And here I'm just telling you who the evil men are, of course the Antichrist, the false prophet, the 10 kings and all the workers of iniquity, and sadly Israel, will be one of the lost kings alongside America and Great Britain at the beginning of the second half of the tribulation period. This will happen when Satan possesses the Antichrist, and yes, and then it gets problematic, with the flood. God is going to protect them supernaturally. There's going to be war in heaven. Michael is going to stand up, and so on. But God is going to have a place for the Jewish people to protect them supernaturally, according to Psalm 91. And of course, the waters, the flood that the Antichrist is going to cause, And then, of course, God is going to protect, the Jewish people supernaturally, just to finish up, if you like. They're going to bless God. They're going to have the testimony of God, according to Revelation 12:17. And, because the Jewish people have the testimony of Jesus, then they're going to start reading the New Testament, and everything's going to be making sense. And then that's what Israel will know, Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 7, Israel will be saved out of it. But, God is sovereign. There's going to be a remnant, and so, that's how it's going to be, And here, it's going to be quite horrific when the Antichrist causes the abomination of desolation and compasses Jerusalem, actually means in the King James Bible. If you read Psalm 74 and then Psalm 79, especially Psalm 74 verse 8 and Psalm 79 verse 3, it's going to be quite horrific. And there's a lot of secrets in the book of Psalms regarding what's going to happen in the tribulation period. So it's going to be quite something. But anyway, the Jewish people, by having the testimony of Jesus, will know that God will help them. They just have to tough it out until Jesus comes back for the millennial kingdom. Israel's prophet will go a long way helping the Jewish people, encouraging them. He'll be prophesying and leading the Jewish people unto Jesus Christ. That will be his role. So, all right, folks, thanks for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.